Morning and welcome to Richard Rohr's daily meditation drawn from the Center for Action and Contemplation. Today is Tuesday, May the 5th, 2020. The theme for this week is community, and the title of today's contribution by Richard Rohr is The Foundation of Community. Can I again encourage you to sign up to Richard Rohr's daily meditation, which you will receive electronically every day, to follow up what we share in this morning. And Richard Rohr writes this: "A divine foundation of relationship is what all religions, spirituality, and perhaps even politics is aiming for. The Trinity offers us this precise gift, a grounded connection with God, self, others, and the world. The ancient doctrine dared to affirm that God is relationship itself. The way of Jesus, therefore, is an invitation to a way of living, loving, and relating, on earth as it is in God. We are intrinsically like the Trinity, living in absolute relatedness. While we may not always recognize it, we are all together in a web of mutual interdependence. When we recognize it on a spiritual level, we call it love." The 12th century mystic Richard of St. Victor wrote about the Trinity as a mutual loving companionship of friends, a community, if you will. In my book, The Divine Dance, I summarized some of his thinking. For God to be good, God can be one. For God to be loving, God has to be two, because love is always a relationship. But for God to share excellent joy and delight, God has to be three, because supreme happiness is when two persons share their common delight in a third something together. All we need to do is to witness a couple after the birth of their new baby, and we know this to be true. The people I have loved with great abandon and freedom were not just the people who loved me, but people who loved what I loved. People who cared about community, the gospel, the poor, justice, honesty. This is where the flow was easy, natural, and life-giving. Two people excited about the same thing are the beginning of almost everything new, creative and risky in our world. Surely this is what Jesus meant by his first and most basic definition of the church as two or three gathered. A community inspired by the Trinity will be a community of people who treat each other as subjects and not as objects. Just as the persons of the Trinity know and love one another, from God's side, we are always known and loved, subject to subject. God and the human person must know one another, center to center, subject to subject, and never subject to object. This is why there is no seeking of power over in the Trinity, but only power with, a giving away, a sharing, a letting go, and thus an infinity of trust and mutuality. This has the power to change all relationships, in marriage, in culture, and even in international relations. If we believe in a Trinitarian God, then we must hold fast to the truth that God is community, a completely loving, mutually self-giving, endlessly generative relationship between equal partners. We are included in that community, and so is everyone else. A Trinitarian image of God should have changed our politics, our gender relationships, all power differentials, and friendship itself. But most of Christian history was never practically Trinitarian." Here ends the meditation.